Hey there, friends. Welcome yet again to another episode of Strange Planet. On this episode, true ghost stories. But before we get into that, just a friendly reminder, if you'd like to get a little deeper into Strange Planet, you might want to consider becoming a premium subscriber. And it's real easy to do. Just click on the link in the episode notes, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. You gain access to commercial-free listening, bonus episodes produced exclusively for premium subscribers, and you receive my monthly newsletter, Inner Sanctum. All right, a good friend of the program and a good friend of mine. In fact, I will give him full credit. He taught me really everything I know about podcasting, and after a spell of, I guess, nearly 8 years, he has now come out finally with his sixth installment, the sixth volume of True Ghost Stories, Jim Harold's Campfire 6. As I mentioned, Jim is a pioneer in podcasting. He's got the Paranormal podcast and Campfire and some others that we'll tell you about as well. And I can't be happier. Always a pleasure to welcome Jim Harold back to Strange Planet. Jim, how are you?
I'm doing well, and particularly well because I'm here with you, Richard. I am honored, such nice words from such a consummate professional such as yourself. So thank you so much, and thank you for having me on the show, and always glad to talk about some spooky stories.
So let me ask you, first of all, the vetting process, because you've been doing Campfire for 15 years, a decade and a half. Mm-hmm. And what is the process, to determine which stories go into a volume of Campfire and which ones don't make the cut?
Well, now see, it's interesting because the show itself is wide open. It's like open lines.
Right.
We don't really turn anybody down. Now, if somebody, and this very rarely happens, I've probably less than 10 times over the last 15 years, if a story just doesn't make sense or something, mm-hmm. or something egregious, we won't air it. But we air probably about 99% of the stories that we intake. But to your point, when we do the book, what we do is we take a time range of 1 or 2 years, and we say, and since we haven't done a show, we haven't done a book for so long, this is back several years ago, we took a 2-year period and we said, let's just go through the best stories that we have. And we didn't really categorize them in the sense we said we have to have this many ghost stories, this many UFO stories, these many cryptids. We said, you know what, let's just pick the ones we like the best. So between my virtual assistant, Maddie, and assistant producer, Maddie, and my wife, Dar, and myself, and we went through them and we picked, Maddie kind of came up with a bunch of stories she thought were good, and I went through them, and we did an internal vetting process, just saying these are the stories that we like. And I will say one thing, and it's just kind of the holdover from the other books. When I say true ghost stories, there are ghost stories in there, definitely. But there's a lot of other kind of stories. So maybe in retrospect, I should have called the series True Ghost Stories and More.
65 stories by my count in Jim Harold's mm-hmm.
True
Ghost Stories, Jim Harold's Campfire, Volume 6. After all these years, what has surprised you the most doing the podcast and putting the books together?
The universality of all of this. I mean, so many people from so many different walks of life experience these things. There's categories of stories I didn't think would be so prominent that are prominent, like doppelgangers, shadow people. I thought it would be all ghosts all the time, and certainly there's a considerable amount of that. But there's a lot more diversity in the stories, but the same types of things being experienced by multiple people from different parts of the country. I hear and thank you, I think, because I think our Canadian listenership is growing. We get a lot of stories from Canada and other parts of the world, but there's a certain thread that goes through them, regardless of where they come from or what walk of life the people are in. So, but I think the diversity of different kinds of stories is what surprised me the most.
And after 15 years with Campfire, is there? I mean, have you ever rattled to the point with one of these stories that is so maybe frightening or disturbing? Or it, for whatever reason, it sticks with you and maybe even keeps you up at night? Is that ever an issue?
It's weird. I thought that would be the case, but it's not. In a way, now there are, I say that the Campfire is just like, and the paranormal in general. When I talk about paranormal, I'm talking about all of it, not just ghosts, but UFOs, cryptids. That to me, the paranormal is a mirror of the normal, in that there's good, bad, happy, sad. And if anything, this has increased my faith in an afterlife. Mm-hmm. This has increased my faith that our loved ones live on. It has also increased my belief that there is true evil in the world. I mean, a lot of people will disagree with me. They'll, my New Age friends who I like and have some interesting and good things to say, but they'll say something like, "Oh, Jim," and I'm sure you've heard the same thing. There is no evil. There's just a lower vibration. I believe
you can call it what you want. You can call it what you want.
Right.
But I'm with you. I believe in evil too.
Yeah. Yeah. But overall, it's had more of a life-affirming kind of feel that this isn't all there is. Because to me, if this was all there was, that we get, if we're lucky, 10, and what you see is what you get, that'd be really depressing to me. Not that you shouldn't live this life to the fullest and you shouldn't enjoy your friends and your family and so forth. I think you should get everything that doesn't hurt somebody else out of this life, whatever form that takes for you. That doesn't mean you live a life necessarily debauchery, but you leave it like a husk. You've gotten all the fruit out. You should take full advantage of this life. However, I believe there's more, and Campfires help bolster that belief.
You mentioned evil. Let's dive into Volume 6. This is a short one, but it's and I'm going out of order here a little bit. But the devil is real. Tell me about this story.
Yeah. Well, this story was from Mariah, and her friend Molly used to always like to play with Ouija boards, and so this day they were, I think this was a trailer, I'm not sure, and they had propped the Ouija board up on a broken, unplugged guitar amp. Now, they would ask for different spirits when they were kind of playing with this board to come through. And there was always this one named Gail that would come through, and this spirit Gail seemed pretty innocuous. So they were expecting more of the same, We'll probably talk to Gail tonight. Well, this particular evening, there was a difference. They were playing with the board, and they were asking for the spirits to come through, and the planchette stopped moving. The room got still, and there was kind of a spooky vibe in the air. Now, remember, they had the board on this unplugged amplifier. It suddenly clicked on. The little red light came on. If you know anything about amplifiers, especially the old ones have that little red light. And it started making sounds like an old-time radio tuner trying to find a station. That kind of thing. All of a sudden, a deep man's voice comes in. He sounds like a Southern preacher in the United States. And it says, or the man said, and he's kind of given fire and brimstone, and then he says, "The devil is real," before the amp audibly clicked off.
Whoa.
And and Mariah said they almost killed each other trying to get out of that room and get out of that place that they were in. Now, Mariah said they did play with the Ouija board again, but never in that location.
Wow.
Yeah.
If that happened to me, that would be it. I would seal that board game
no more Ouija board. No more
into
Ouija.
the fire. It would
but this is Yeah, it's amazing. And the thing is I've heard this before in different instances with paranormal things happening with different kinds of electronics. And the most interesting ones are where something that takes AC is unplugged. We had a woman years ago who worked in a funeral home, and she said various things would happen in that funeral home. One of them is there was this light that clicked on, and she couldn't figure out. She went to look at it. It clicked on. It was unplugged. We've had TVs turning themselves on and changing channels being unplugged. That's where it really gets interesting because, any kind of electronic, is prone, if it's plugged in, something weird can happen. Mm-hmm. But when you have particularly something with a mechanical aspect to it, like that guitar amp or like an old school television or like a lamp that has, there's electronics, but there's also a mechanical switch. Right. When things start turning themselves on, Richard, and they're unplugged, that's when I want out of the room.
Anything like that ever happened to you?
No. I can't think of a time. I'm trying to rack my brain. No, I don't think that I've ever had anything like that happen to me. And I really, this is a funny thing. People will say, well, do you want these paranormal things to happen to you? Now, if it's a message from a loved one or something like that, and I've had things like that, mm-hmm. I'm all for it. That's great. If it's, guitar amps turning themselves on and lamps turning themselves on and evil visitations, not so much. I'm not that brave. I'm kind of like I'm safely behind my microphone.
No, I'm with you.
I don't want to. Yeah, but it's interesting because you would think, because sometimes, like yourself, I'm sure, record at nighttime. I'll have my window open and it'll be dark, and somebody will be telling me this terrifying ghost story, and I don't get scared. And I think it's because I'm just so into the podcasting piece of it that it just alleviates my fear. Whereas, sometimes, I don't know about you, but sometimes if it's dark on the first level of my house and everybody's gone to bed, I'll quicken my step up the stairs. So it's kind of a weird juxtaposition.
Sure. No, I'm with you on that. I record in the mornings now, not just because of that, but tell me about this story. Two sisters are better than one.
Oh, yeah. This is a good one, and it actually happened in my home state of Ohio. Now, Anna lived in Ohio, and her sister had lived with her for a time, but her sister left to work in Chicago in June of 2008. And anyway, it was her brother's birthday, Anna's brother's birthday, on July 13th, 2008. And Anna made a mental note, I've got to call him because Anna's parents had shared with her that he had a job loss. He was kind of depressed. He wasn't feeling great. And she made a mental note that morning, I've got to call my brother. Mm-hmm. But so many times in life, we say, I'm going to do that. I'm going to reach out to that person. And then you don't do it.
Yeah.
And I think in retrospect, Anna thought it was going to go in that direction, that she would have gotten busy and not done it. But something changed that. So anyway, later that day, she was walking her dog. Later that morning, she was walking her dog. And she saw her neighbor, Karen. Now, Karen is one of those people, I think most people have somebody in your neighborhood like this, who knows everything about everything. And she's very observant. She knows who comes, who goes, who got a new roof, who lost their job, whatever. Karen knows, everybody's got a Karen in their neighborhood. And anyway, and that really was her name. And this was way before the whole Karen thing online. But anyway, so Karen said, oh, your sister's back in town. And Anna says, wait a minute. My sister's not in town. She's in Chicago. She's like, no, I just saw her in her car driving through the neighborhood and I waved. And she said, no, she's not here. She's in Chicago. She went and took this job last month in Chicago and she's not here. She said, well, I saw her. So anyway, she didn't think anything of it. She thought, oh, Karen's mistaken. She just, a lot of people look alike, have similar cars, whatever. So anyway, later that day, Anna is cleaning her house. And she's in her bedroom, and she sees on her sister's stationery, in her sister's handwriting, her brother's name and his current phone number, because Anna didn't have the phone number. She was going to get it from her parents. So she didn't have his updated phone number. And it was written, in a very distinctive handwriting from her sister. And she thought, oh my God, where did that come from? My sister took most of her stuff to Chicago. There are a few boxes, but they are downstairs in the basement. This is the second level of the house. I was in this bedroom this morning. And this wasn't there. And so she calls her sister, and she's like, you're in town, aren't you? And she said, no, I'm in Chicago. What are you talking about? And she said, and she told her what happened. She said, did you write a note with our brother's information on it? She said, no. She said, I don't remember doing anything like that. And she said, well, it was in the middle of my bed where I couldn't possibly miss it. So, so Anna took that as a sign from the universe and called her brother, and he was so happy to hear from her. And she really felt that made a difference for him. I think that from everything I could tell when we did this story a few years back, he was well. And Anna thinks it might have been maybe something from one of her grandparents or some kind of intervention from the other side to make this happen somehow, to get that note, because her brother really needed that phone call.
Right.
So I don't know how you explain that. With some of these stories, Richard, I say there's two possibilities. The person is making it up, which I don't know why she would make it up. I don't know why Anna would make it up. I don't believe she made it up. Or something supernatural was going on, because that note couldn't have, she was in her bedroom that morning. There was no note. And then all of a sudden, the note shows up in the middle of the bed. The closest thing that would be some boxes down 2 flights down the basement that might have had some old stationery in it. I don't know. But it's either supernatural or it's a fairy tale. And I think it's supernatural.
Yeah, it's interesting because, it almost sounds like the sister was bilocating or something, for the neighbor across the street to see the sister in a car drive by, for the letter to be there. Like she was in two places at the same time. I've never heard anything like that before. I've heard of bilocating before,
right?
But for the sister not to
usually around death.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, Richard. And that story's a few years old, but even like a week or two ago, I forget what story it was. As long as I've been doing the Campfire, and you probably have the same experience doing Coast and doing your shows, and you hear these, wild stories. There's always something new. There's always something unexpected. You would think after doing something this long, I've heard every story. You've not. There's just these unique kind of paranormal things. Now, a lot of times, doppelgangers, which is one that I mentioned, it comes up a lot more than I ever expected. That's one's usually kind of sinister, right? People will complain of knocking and weird things in the house. And then somebody will mimic a loved one. We had a story I may have shared it with you before. We had a story very early on the show. It was a young woman. She must have been a teenager at the time this happened. She was an adult by the time she called in. But I got the impression she was probably in her 20s. So anyway, she got the school bus from school, and it would drop her off in front of her house. It was a trailer. So this one day, her mom's there. The girl comes in. It's time to come home. The girl comes in, curses a blue streak at her mom, and then goes down the hall of the trailer and slams her door. 5 minutes later, the girl comes in the front, and she's like, "Hi, Mom. How you doing?" And she's like, didn't you just curse me out? And she said, I don't know what you're talking about. Yikes. I didn't curse you out at all. And they went down to the room and nobody was there. So the thing is that, and this was the young woman who was calling in, who was the cursor. So she had no reason to. So it wasn't like the mom called in and said, because you could always say, oh, the kid was making it up. She did curse you out, went out the back door, came back in. No, this was the person who was doing the cursing, telling this story. And I think there were some other things. If I remember correctly, it's been probably 13, 14 years. I may not remember perfectly, but I think there were some other things going on in the house, and maybe it was a little more of a troubled time. That's a theme you see a lot of times with doppelgangers.
Right.
But the point is that how do you explain that? I don't know. I have no idea.
What have you figured out over all of these years? Anything in terms of what might be happening?
I hate to tell you. I will say this. I am more convinced that something is going on. I'm more convinced than ever that whether it's with UFOs, it's ghosts, it's cryptids, too many people who really have, when you're on a podcast, there's no, what's the word I'm looking for? There's no percentage in telling a story. It's not like you're going on Joe Rogan. You're not going to be famous by going on a Campfire podcast. There's no real advantage to it other than you want to tell your story. And I believe these people believe what they're saying. And I believe that the vast majority of the time it's happening the way they explain it. Does that mean that every leaky faucet or bad electrical is a ghost? No, but I think these things do happen, and they're real.
Yeah, if even 1% of them are true, then it means it's real. It's a real thing.
And I really believe it's way more than that. I really, these people, the vast majority are very sincere. My favorite stories are people who say something like, well, nothing ever happens to me, but this one time did. Those are my favorite.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I find on the show, if somebody says, I've got like 10 stories I want to tell you. Well, a lot of times when people have 10 stories, they don't have one. Although I do believe some people are legitimately more sensitive than others. I do believe that. It's like some people are better at playing basketball or hockey, using the Canadian analogy. Some people are just better at this and pick things up. They're like a radio receiver.
I agree.
You used to be able to buy buy a radio and a little cheapy radio, and it would pick up the big stations. But then you get the GE Super Radio or the Zenith, whatever it was. I forget, Transoceanic or whatever it was. And those would pick up, could pick up from far distances. And I think people are like that. I think everybody has hunches. I think everybody picks up a little bit, but some people are those super radios of the paranormal.
That's a great analogy. Jim Harold has just released Jim Harold's Campfire Volume 6, True Ghost Stories, Jim Harold's Campfire Volume 6. And we'll take a quick time out. When we come back, we'll talk about creepy, crawly things. Stay with us. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. Podcast pioneer Jim Harold is back, and his programs, Campfire, the Paranormal Podcast, have been downloaded over 65 million times. And True Ghost Stories, Jim Harold's Campfire, Volume 6, now available. It's the number one, all of his campfires have been supernatural bestsellers, all Kindle number one supernatural bestsellers. And I'm sure Campfire Volume 6 will be no different. Let's talk creepy crawly things, Jim.
Yeah, this one is really freaky, and I really appreciate when people call in with workplace stories. I always find them fascinating because you think about haunted houses, but you don't necessarily think about haunted workplaces, but they're out there. And this dates back to 2004. This was Ed from Texas, and he worked at a paper mill in California. And one Thursday night, he was assigned to the basement driving a forklift. And he would basically move around scrap paper. He would I don't know how to best explain it. He would shovel it up and it'd be in piles, and he'd have to put it in this hole that would go down to a disposal pit or something. So that was basically it. He would take these containers, drain out the water by rotating them and drive them and put them in the trash. So anyway, this one night he was going about his job, nothing unusual about it yet. And then he picked up one of these containers and he started to rotate it. And he was looking closely at it to make sure that he got it just right. And as he was looking to the side, he saw something off in the distance. It was about 30 feet and it looked like a person, and it was crawling on the floor. Now, you think, oh my gosh, somebody's crawling on the floor. I don't want to run him over. I've got to watch and see what's going on. And he said within 30 seconds, this, quote, person went from 30 feet away to 3 feet in front of him, just like that. And it came up to him, and then it just disappeared. It looked to be a Caucasian wearing a short-sleeved blue shirt, looked like part of a work uniform, blondish hair, but he seemed to be, better than a snake at crawling. And he said he couldn't remember his face, but he was so struck by it that they had a little shack there. And he was supposed to be working, obviously, all night. And he was so scared that he went in his shack all night and didn't do anything else because it was so freaky. So anyway, a few days later, he was with a coworker who was, I guess they used to call it, breaking him in on a new job. Mm-hmm. He was instructing him how to do this job. And this guy tells him, hey, Ed, I forgot to tell you, I saw something strange last Thursday. And basically, same thing. This guy saw the same thing. Now, at first they thought, well, maybe it was a practical joke because the guys would, as many times it happens on a tough job like that, guys kind of, and women, of course, too, play jokes on each other. Mm-hmm. But they asked around, no jokes. And they tried to see if there was anybody else that would experience this. I mean, this thing was weird because it didn't crawl like a human would crawl. It crawled sideways. It looked like it was bent over backward, and it was crawling with its back facing the ground. So it was just really, really unusual. So anyway, they had asked around and tried to figure out. Nobody had seen it, but while they were asking about had there been any accidents or anything that had happened there. Turns out in the 1970s, there were a couple of fatalities at the mill. One of them was a worker was carrying a large 1,000-pound filing cabinet on a forklift. He was guiding a college student who was working there as like an internship or something, or some kind of college intake program. The intern apparently tripped and fell backward. The person on the forklift hit the brakes, and this filing cabinet fell on his student and crushed him to death. So was that the ghost of this student? Was it maybe from the other fatality that he didn't get into? I don't know. But I mean, again, who would even think something like that up?
Exactly.
Again, that's the thing about these stories, a lot of them are just so unique. Who would even think to make that up, and why?
Yeah, let's be honest. Most people are not that creative. I mean, you've got, great writers out there, and you've got filmmakers and painters and so on. Most people are not a guy driving a forklift. No offense, but not necessarily going to be the most creative person in the world. Otherwise, they would have gone into a different field. For someone to, the detail there is incredible, and that's a disturbing one. When you mentioned the way it was crawling and slithering and sort of bent over backwards, it reminded me of one of the most disturbing scenes in film history, and that is from The Exorcist, when Linda Blair's character is coming down the stairs, like walking like a crab. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And I think the reason it's so scary is that it goes against what we're conditioned to see, right? It's the same thing without the black-eyed kid phenomena, where these kids show up with totally black, solid eyes. The reason it's so creepy is we think of our children, of course, as the most innocent and, approachable, and to think that there's something else going on with some of those stories, that they might not really be children. They might be something else. But the incongruity of what you see and what you expect. That's why the Linda Blair thing is so disturbing, because you don't expect a human to be able to do that.
No. That one might keep me up at night.
That one could do it. That one could do it.
This, I love the title of this next story. It sounds like it could be a book or a film all on its own. The Mysterious Mrs. Raspberry.
Oh, I'm glad that you asked me about this one, because this might be my favorite story in the book. And it's, you might call it a ghost story. So anyway, this was, this young lady's name was Jennifer from Idaho. Now, this goes back to the early 80s, and she lived in a small town in Idaho. It was the summertime, and back in the day, she said she'd go with her friend, she'd say bye to her mom, and then she'd be gone till dinner time, before cell phones, and I think when we had a little more innocence in the world. So anyway, this one day, her and her friend Connie decide to take a trip down the railroad tracks. There were some decommissioned railroad tracks that were about a block from her house, and that ran all the way down to a nearby lake. It was about 4 miles. And they said, we are going to do it. We're going to walk the tracks all the way to the lake. So anyway, these kids were 8 and 9 years old, very adventurous. So they kept walking. And then about a mile from her house, it became densely forested. And then there was this big clearing. There were a couple of houses, and there was a big raspberry thicket by one of the houses. There was also a lady, a little bit older lady, hanging up her laundry on the line. And the kid stopped and talked to her. And she was very, very nice. And she wore what they used to call a house dress, And then at that time, you would still see maybe older women wearing those. And they were talking to her, and she's very nice. And she said, would you like some raspberries? And they said, sure, we'd love some raspberries. So they picked some raspberries off the bush, and they put their shirts and made them like baskets, as kids do, and put the raspberries in, and they ate them, and they were delicious. So anyway, they thanked her, and they went about their way, and they made it to the lake. So anyway, they're coming back. And keep in mind, Richard, this track goes one way. There's no offshoots or anything. It's one straight track. And they had a fun day at the lake, and they had their raspberries, and they had their shirts that were now stained with the raspberries. So anyway, they're walking back, and they come back to the place where the houses and the raspberries and the lady should have been. And there was nothing there. Totally gone. And Jennifer says that she's recently talked to her friend at the time of this storytelling, maybe within a year of when she told me this story. Her friend remembers it exactly the same way, every detail. And it turns out that Jennifer shortly after this happened, she was talking to her grandma. And she told her what had happened. She said, well, that is strange. There were houses in that area before the railroad tracks were built, which would have put it around the 1920s. And she's walked the tracks numerous times, again, trying to find that mysterious Mrs. Raspberry. And she's not found her and not found the houses.
Wow. Well, that one touches me close to home. We have a raspberry bush in our backyard. And my mother-in-law, who she loved that raspberry bush. This was her house, and she passed away last fall here at the house. And
I'm sorry.
She loved to go out to that raspberry bush and collect the raspberries. Even as she got, increasingly more frail, she would go out even with her walking cane, and she would get a little teacup out of the kitchen cupboards and go out to the raspberry bush and bring them back. And her grandchildren, my two boys, would put them on their breakfast cereal. Oh, she loved that. Wow. Mrs. Raspberry. Terrific. Another time out, Jim, back with more True Ghost Stories. Jim Harold's Campfire, Volume 6. Stay with us. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. And we're back with podcast pioneer Jim Harold. You've got the Paranormal podcast. You have Jim Harold's Campfire. 15 years or longer now for Campfire?
Campfire just celebrated its 15th anniversary in April. And Paranormal podcast will celebrate its 19th anniversary in July, which I think, as far as I know, and I always caveat this, as far as I know, the Paranormal podcast is the longest running paranormal podcast on the internet. There are people, who started within a month or two of me after that are still going. But I think that it is the longest continuously running paranormal podcast on the planet. And the funny thing about it is I remember when I first started, and even at that time, there were a couple before me. There were like 3 or 4 that kind of that I found. There used to be this website called Podcast Alley. This is back 2005. And I looked at it and I saw the other paranormal podcasts. I'm like, oh, there's already 4 or 5 of these things. How am I going to compete? And again, I just did it as a hobby because I love the subject matter. I loved In Search Of, I loved Unsolved Mysteries. I loved listening to the late, great Art Bell. I thought, I want a podcast. I want a podcast on something that I enjoy, something that interests me. I thought, how cool is this? As a hobby, I will just interview these authors and experts on the paranormal, and I'll have all this stuff figured out within 6 months. Didn't work out that way. But I'm very grateful.
What area of the paranormal do you find, it may not keep you up at night, but it, let's say, freaks you out the most, disturbs you the most?
Oh, disturbs me the most. Oh, you know what? And this might not be the answer you'd expect. The idea that there are stuck souls, because like you, I have faith, although I think that you're probably a much better representative of that, and I don't have enough faith, and I'm not.
No.
But the point is, I like to think that I do believe in God, and I wouldn't think that a loving God would allow a spirit to be stuck. And when people talk about stuck spirits, if that's true, then I think, oh my gosh, that's not very loving. That's not very nice. So if that's true, that would highly disturb me. So I would think it's not the spooky, scary stuff. I guess because I always have believed that evil is real, and that there are bad forces out there as well as good. I think there's more good than there is bad. Even if you look at the headlines, I still believe there's more good than there is bad. But I always kind of knew that. That didn't surprise me. But this idea of you have to tell the spirit to go to the light and so forth. And it's interesting because I just was talking on Paranormal podcast with Dustin Perry, formerly of Ghost Hunters, great guy. And I asked him that. I said, Dustin, you're a paranormal investigator of many years' experience. What about people say, well, if you encounter a ghost, you help them go to the light? And he said, I won't say exactly what he said, but he says basically total BS in his view. That really, and I'm paraphrasing here, so I don't want to be fair to Dustin, but the idea is that, just by, going through a house with an EMF meter and taking EVPs and things, what qualifies you to move somebody over to the other side? That was the gist of his comment.
That makes sense.
So I agree with him, actually. But I guess my point is that would bother me more than anything. The idea that there are stuck souls. I don't know that I buy that there are stuck souls. Now, there may be people who visit for some reason. It could be that they loved a place, that they hated a place. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what that is. And I don't know how much of that kind of thing is residual as well.
Maybe that's purgatory. Is it purgatory, do you think? Being stuck on this plane?
Never thought about that. I guess it could be. Never thought about it that way. That's an interesting thing. And that's the thing I love about doing these shows, whether it's being on a show with you as your guest or having a guest. No matter how long you talk about this stuff, there's still a new point to be made. And that's what I like about it, is that it doesn't get old. At least it doesn't get old for me.
Well, the other thing is, and people might say, well, what does any of this matter? There's wars going on, and there's elections coming up. That's all sort of temporary stuff. The stuff that you talk about, the stuff that I talk about, is eternal. Really, we're talking about eternity. We're talking about, ultimately, I think, when we're talking about ghosts and all of these things, we're talking about death. What happens after we die? Where do we go? Where did we come from? What happens after we die? Those are the most important questions.
Yes. When people say, what is your pet subject? Because again, I kind of cover it all. I don't just focus in on ghosts or UFOs or cryptids. The thing that interests me the most is the afterlife topic. And the reason it is because not everybody's going to see a UFO. Not everybody's going to necessarily see a ghost or even a cryptid. But everybody's got, even if you believe in survival of our spirits, which I certainly do, we're all going to, there's an old spiritual. You got to walk that lonesome valley. You got to walk it by yourself. Ain't nobody here going to walk it for you. You got to walk it by yourself. And that's true. Nothing truer has been ever said. And we're all going to have to make that journey, whether you're the biggest atheist in the world, the biggest materialist who believes, hey, you take the dirt nap, that's it, you're done. Or you're somebody like us who believes in an afterlife. Either way, we're all going to have to take that journey. So to me, that's the ultimate subject. And if you had the answer to that, you would have the answer to so many of the other questions that we ask on these shows. They're kind of peripheral to that main central question. So you encapsulated my thoughts on it perfectly.
Tell me about my secret tunnel.
Oh, this is a good one. And again, this is one of those, and I'm just trying to pull it up here because as I mentioned to Richard, this is a new book for me, so I'm still trying to refresh myself on the stories as we go along. I'll get where I'm good at it, but Richard here's got to kind of suffer with my
That's all right.
my ineptitude. But no, this is a cool one because again, so many of these stories, I call them head scratchers because they don't fall into a certain category. They're just kind of like, huh. They're head scratchers, literally. Well, this was Kelly from Georgia. And basically, this was when she was 5 or 6. And she had moved to a new town. She was about 80 miles away from where she grew up, her first home. And she said, as a small child, she used to travel, but in a very unique way. She would travel in her secret tunnel. And what so anyway, I'll explain what the secret tunnel is. Kelly's mom noticed that Kelly was very downhearted after they moved and thought, well, maybe it's just because we moved or whatever. And she said, what's wrong, Kelly? Don't you like your new home? And Kelly said, the house is fine. It's just that I can't find the tunnel here. And her mom said, what are you talking about, a tunnel? And she explained to her mom that when she was the first house, she would crawl under her parents' bed, never her bed, her parents' bed, and there was a tunnel that she would enter. And on the other side, there was a village. And she didn't remember this conversation, but her mother told her this conversation. But she remembered the tunnel. Kelly remembered the tunnel. She said she had childhood memories of crawling through a tunnel and being in a park-like setting. Once through the tunnel, I would sit on a bench at the top of a really steep hill. There was a beautiful view of the village below. It wasn't my town or any place I'd been to or seen on television. It was just this random, peaceful, hilly place. She also said there would be dogs there behind a fence, and they would bark at her. And she said it was just a very restful and very happy place for her. And she wouldn't interact with others. She would just watch the people walking by. There were people there, but she would just go to this place. And once she got to the new house, she was very upset because she couldn't go there anymore. Well, she never found the tunnel again, but years later, she found something that may have given her a little bit of a clue. Now, one thing she said, she was not given a flights of fancy as a child. Mm-hmm. She was very kind of feet on the ground, so forth. So this wasn't the kind, she wasn't like constantly making up stories or anything.
Right.
But there was this one thing that she insisted on. So over time, she says she grew up, she forgot about the village kind of. She didn't think about it very much. And she figured she'd never see it again. And she said, as of the telling of this story, I think in 2015, she said she had spent a few years in the Bay Area in California. And she had a very strange experience. She was researching places to picnic in San Francisco, and she saw a photo of a park on top of a big hill. When she saw the image, she said she felt goosebumps all over. It was even more emotional when she actually went to the park. The goosebumps returned. The tears welled up in her eyes because the park was very similar to what she'd experienced through the tunnel. Was exactly the same place? She said she's not sure, but it might just have been similar enough to trigger those memories. Yet the sensation of being in that park in San Francisco was so intense. So, Richard, did she kind of find another way to get to that place that wasn't her secret tunnel?
Wow, that's such an awesome story. As you were telling me that story, telling us that story, crawling under the bed, finding this secret place, it reminds me of like the Narnia Chronicles, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
She actually mentioned that in her story.
Oh, wow.
She said it's like that old TV movie, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. After I told my mom this story as a kid, she rented the video of the cartoon adaptation and asked, is it like this? And she said, yeah, it's kind of similar.
Wow.
So funny you mentioned that.
That's a wonderful, wonderful story. I got to get you to tell me one more, because I married into the Greek culture. My wife is Greek, of course, the mighty Aphrodite, and we know all about the evil eye. In the Italians call it the malocchio, the evil eye.
Yeah.
Tell us about that one.
Yeah, that's a good one. And it kind of resonates with me as well, because my wife is Italian. Mm-hmm. So, and, some people would say it's superstitious, but she really does believe in it. And I had occasion, maybe you talked to him too. I'm trying to search for his name. Antonio Pagliarulo, I believe is his name, wrote a book about the evil eye. And a lot of the things he described, I recognized in my wife's family. Like if you would bring over a new baby or something, or you would have a new car, they would say, "Oh, how beautiful, God bless." Well, the God bless, see, it turns out with the evil eye, you can do it intentionally and put the evil eye on somebody, but you could also unintentionally put it on somebody, because it would be like an envy that creeps in.
Exactly.
So you seal off the compliment with something like God bless. So that would stop any kind of inadvertent evil eye.
Right.
Which I thought, I'd always heard that. I remember specifically certain family members would say, "Oh, how beautiful, God bless." And I'm like, why do they do that all the time? Now I know. But anyway, this gets back to that's a good way to find the story, Richard, I'll tell you that. But Eddie from Illinois told this story. He said that he's from the south side of Chicago, first generation Sicilian American. And he said, like most Italians, he was raised as a devout Catholic. Although on the one side of the family, there was an interesting kind of dalliance with Italian witchcraft. He said that old Sicilians called it La Vecchia Religione. I hope I pronounced that right. That means the old religion. He said that his family didn't practice it that much, but it was little things that kind of crept in here and there. It was kind of a protection thing. And even my late father-in-law used to have the Italian horn on his car mirror, and they would have change in the car. There's like little traditions, even though he was a big-time Catholic. But anyway, so this happened when Eddie was 17. He was about to go to college. And part of his gift from his parents was a trip to Sicily to see his grandmother, aunts and uncles, and family. And he said it was just fantastic. Had a great time, really enjoyed it, except he'd always heard stories about his grandmother's neighbor. She was strange and had a lot of hatred towards Eddie's family. It turns out that a family member had gone on a date or two with her daughter. Actually, her Eddie's dad went on a date or two with this woman's daughter. It didn't work out. And this woman not only disliked Eddie's dad, but she claimed that Eddie's grandmother had an affair with the neighbor's spouse. So she was kind of mean and not really very likable. So one day when Eddie was in Sicily with his family, they were leaving the house to visit some relatives, and the neighbor came outside screaming. Then she threw a dead chicken at them, and she screamed something in Italian that Eddie didn't understand. Now, he could get by in Italian, but this was a dialect, and he just did not get it. Eddie's mom said this lady put the malocchio on them. That's the evil eye. But his mom wasn't so much for the Italian witchcraft thing. She didn't really believe in it. It was more on her dad's side. She said, "Don't worry about it. We'll say a quick prayer and we'll be fine." Eddie said 2 weeks went by. When they were in Sicily, everything was fine. They got home, things changed immediately. As soon as they got back, there was a lot of angst, a lot of anger and tension. You'd walk into the room and there'd be prominent cold spots, even though the house wasn't typically drafty. And in addition to the cold spots, there were areas with bad smells in the house that had never been there before. Then there was fighting. Eddie's family was always very peaceful. They all got along, no screaming, no nothing. They get back, his sisters always got along, but now they were constantly at each other's throat. ghosts. For the first time ever, Eddie's parents were openly screaming at each other. There were so many problems going on. It lasted about 2 weeks. And then it got worse one night when Eddie's mom was sleeping. She said she woke up and knew she was being stared at. Ooh. Now, again, his mom didn't believe in any of this stuff. She said she looked over. Eddie's dad was still asleep, but she knew someone else was in the room. She sat up in bed, looked around, didn't see anything, and tried to get back to sleep. Then she felt an icy grasp around her ankle as she was dozing off. Something pulled her firmly and quickly, and she ended up just slightly off the bed. She jumped up and started screaming. She was crying. At first, she thought that her husband was playing a joke on her. He said, no, I wasn't playing on a joke on her. And she would not go back to bed. She went and slept on the couch. Now, again, she's very level-headed, doesn't give in to this stuff, always finds a logical explanation. And it really impacted the kids because they knew she was this way. And it's like, if mom is scared, there's something to this. Mm-hmm. So anyway, they kept a rosary next to each of their beds. And one night he woke up and there was a heavy presence in the room. He said the room was very dark. He looked around, couldn't see anything, not even a glow from a TV or anything. And he said in the corner of his bedroom, there was a tall, wide spot that was beyond pitch black. So much so that the shape looked like a hole cut into the universe. It was bobbing up and down like it was breathing, and every time he closed his eyes, it seemed to get closer and closer. He reached over, grabbed his rosary, and thought, okay, this has got to go away. He tried to say a prayer, the Lord's Prayer, and he couldn't remember the words that he's been saying since he was 5 years old. He couldn't get it out. He forgot the words and everything. That's when he started to hear fast, heavy breathing. It was like a panting sound, and it got closer. He closed his eyes. He turned his head, and when he looked over again, the blackness was right beside his bed. He immediately shot up and ran for the door, but his legs felt like metal. He couldn't move, he couldn't run, he couldn't do anything. The more he struggled, the worse it got. He got nauseous, kind of like you feel like when you're on a tilt-a-whirl. And then he ran out of his room into his parents' room, and he said, listen, there's something here because I'm experiencing it. Mom's experiencing it. We've all been fighting. Something's going on. The next day, they called the parish priest. He came over and did a blessing, and all was well. And he said, to this day, his mom and dad, and him as well, are convinced that the rude Sicilian lady sent them home with a very unwelcomed visitor. And I'll be honest with you, I totally believe it. I totally believe it.
Me too. Me too. Let me, for those watching on Rumble and YouTube, you'll see this. If you're listening on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, you'll just have to listen in. 1 second. Give me 2 seconds. I'll be right back. All right, here I am. There it is. That's to ward off the evil eye. And that was that's in my studio with me always. My late mother-in-law gave this to me one Christmas because she's a big fan, or she was a big fan, and she knows, the kinds of things that come across the airwaves and so forth. So as a protection, the evil eye. It's a big topic in our family. And in Greeks, if someone gives you a compliment, and again, as you say, it could be inadvertently giving you the evil eye. There's a couple of things you do. You say scordo, which is Greek for garlic. You'll say scordo, scordo, scordo to ward off the curse. And my lovely bride remembers going to school. Sometimes she would go with a piece of garlic in her pocket to school just to ward off the evil eye. There you go. Great story.
Yeah, it sounds very much like even those different cultures, very similar to the experience of my wife, because the family really did believe in that sort of thing, particularly, I think, her dad's side. Very much so.
No, there's definitely something happening there. I've seen things. So, Jim, this is a fantastic collection you've put together here. True Ghost Stories, Jim Harold's Campfire, Volume 6. Congratulations. I know it's going to be another #1 Kindle bestseller for you, and you are such a treasure. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Richard. I appreciate it. They can get it on Amazon, and this time, for the first time, they can get it at Barnes & Noble and other places as well, paperback and ebook, and just hope everybody gets a chance to read it. It's a lot of fun, and it's a good, if you need a book to read for a short break, for a short time, it's a good book. You can pick it up, read a story or two, and then go about your day. Or go to sleep if you can.
Jim Harold. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. Hey friends, welcome once again to another installment of Strange Planet, and it is a far stranger planet than we can possibly comprehend. On this episode, my guest says the time for disclosure is now. Before we get to that, once again, a friendly reminder, if you'd like to get a little deeper into Strange Planet, why not consider becoming a premium subscriber? It's real easy to do. Just click on the link in the episode notes and you get access to commercial-free listening, special bonus episodes, 2 per month produced exclusively for premium subscribers, and you also receive my monthly newsletter, Inner Sanctum. Again, click on the link in the episode notes, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. All right, let's dive right in. Nancy Thames is a former Department of Defense employee and a lifelong contactee of interdimensional extraterrestrial beings. She's emerged as a significant voice in the realm of alien disclosure and spiritual awakening. Her journey, marked by personal struggles, transformed profoundly through her continuous extraterrestrial encounters. These experiences, initially suppressed, were eventually embraced as Nancy began to understand their purpose in her life and for humanity. She's come to the decisive conclusion it is time for disclosure. Her dedication to this cosmic narrative propelled her to create timefordisclosure.com, a platform advocating for open dialogue about extraterrestrial interactions and the greater implications for humanity. And it's a great pleasure to welcome Nancy Thames to Strange Planet. Nancy, how are you?
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for having me. I'm proud to be here.
A lifelong contactee. Let's begin with your first physical contact with interdimensionals.
Okay. My first conscious memories go back to 2 and 3 years old. And at that time, I had no boundaries around me. It was just organic in the experience, and it was fun. I enjoyed it. They made it delightful. They would make it playful, educational, but the education part was so playful. It was just absolutely fun. So throughout my life, it stayed like that. And it wasn't until I became older and the world around me started influencing my perception of my experiences. What I thought was just fun, and delightful. The fear that the world was expressing, the negativity that the world was expressing started affecting me. And so the visitations stopped being the playful. It became more of a fearful, questioning what's going on. And they were very patient with me during this process. And I noticed that instead of having fully conscious experiences, when I would start getting very emotional and fearful, into telepathically, they would tell me at times through the process of getting me from my home to craft, they would tell me to keep my eyes closed. They would take a handheld device that never touched my body, but they would run it from head to toe, toe to head, up and down. And then as I would start to elevate off the bed, I would start to open my eyes and look around and realize that this was real. This was not a dream like all the people in the world or all of my family were telling me. This was a very real experience. This was not an out-of-body experience. This was not a dream. This was the real deal. And I would look over and I would be holding the hands of a female gray, who was not gray, but a reddish brown color. So, and they would take me by the hand and lead me up through the roof or through a door or through even a window. And this was very hard for me to understand at this age. I was taking science classes, I was taking biology classes, and everything in our world, in our reality, said humans are not able to do these things. And so when I would start to talk about something like this, my parents would shut me down and say, that's your imagination. Humans cannot do this. Humans cannot talk about these type subjects. Growing up in Tennessee, which is deep South and also part of the Bible Belt, and these things were considered demonic, and you did not talk about them. My family were very active. They were very public. My father was a radio announcer, owned a radio station, later got into politics. I was active in sports, Girl Scouts, and this was not something that the family would want someone to talk about, because the perception in the world I was growing up in was not ready and did not receive it well. And also I noticed through my anxiety that rather than having the full conscious experience like I did as a child, they would touch me on the top of my head, or however they do all these things. We'll never understand it all, but they would put me in a trance-like state. I was fully functional, but I was no longer experiencing anxiety. I was no longer experiencing fear. It took away all the emotions, and I simply was able to go through the experience, learn the educational parts and all the things that they needed from me, checking on my spiritual growth, checking on my mental well-being, checking on my physical well-being, without me crying or without me being in fear and feeling anxiety. And one of the main reasons why they do this, well, actually, there's two reasons. One being it makes it easier for me to do and continue through the experience. And the second reason is because they are telepathic. Whatever I or we humans feel, they are not used to these type of emotions. In their reality, they do not experience this. So they experience it tenfold what we feel. It is not favorable. They don't know what to do with these feelings. So they simply tap us out. It makes their job and makes my task, each of our tasks, a lot easier, and we complete the experience without all the nonsense.
When you were younger and you said the encounters were very playful,
Yes.
can you expand on that a little bit? Were they playing games with you? What was the purpose of that?
The purpose of that is to make me feel comfortable and for me to understand who I am. They would take me by the hand and we would go up, and I would be traveling through in the sky, looking down at cities, or in some cases outside of our planet, looking at other cities that were not here on Earth. And they would say things to me like, you're a little princess. These are your cities. Look over your world. This is you are part of all of this. We are all connected. These are our worlds. And they were just, wanted me to be proud of who I was. And so they were showing me things. And usually though, when we were holding hands, there was a craft nearby. And one amazing thing that I've always noticed is that as I'm going to craft, I see it. And from what I can compare it to here on Earth, it looks about half the size of a football field here in the United States. But when you approach and walk in the craft, it's like you walk into a different dimension. It is humongous.
Right.
Your whole perception and reality changes, becomes it's massive. So they were teaching me things. They wanted it to be playful and fun and not something that I would dread, because I have the ability, I know before they're coming. I have a frequency, and my frequency changes. It elevates before they get here. I know they're coming. Now, they probably do this intentionally for me to prepare myself mentally, because now when I start to feel it, I have to remind myself, because this human programming that I have received all my life, my first reaction that my brain does is it's fear. It's fear. And even now at my age, and I'm 64, I have to stop and go, wait a minute, this is not fear. I know what this is. And then I remind myself, experience this. This is not fearful.
Are you taking aboard the craft to this day?
Yes.
Constant? How often? Give me
very often.
frequency.
And if not physical, they are always in my dream state. And a lot of times, to be honest with you, even though I'm not sure if it's dream state or if I'm doing it, sometimes it feels like I'm participating in two worlds. It's very strange. The older I get, the more I realize how complex all this is. And our understanding of it will continue. We will be continually to learn more about it, because it is far beyond anything that we experience here on Earth. It's very deep, very complex, and we'll never know everything about it until we are actually up there in the cosmic realm experiencing it ourselves.
Right. You called them grays, but you said that they were sort of reddish brown in color. So what leads you to believe they are the gray aliens?
Okay. Here's how it happens for me. I am a contactee with interdimensional and positive extraterrestrials. So when they come to get me, they send 3 grays. Grays always travel in 3s. One of them is a female. She is the reddish brown, and she is a gray because I have physically been with her. She comes for me every single time. She gets me prepared for our trip to craft. And she is female. She speaks telepathic to me. When she speaks telepathic to me, I cannot sense by her messages whether she's male or female. But I know that she is, because of her frequency and my bond with her. It is a loving, guardian, motherly-like bond that she and I have. And it's not the same feelings or the same ways that you do about your Earth mother. It's totally different, but we are a bond. And she has the same emotional attachments and feelings towards me, shown in a different way, but they are real. And she has them. And she is a gray hybrid. She was created by the tall grays and the interdimensionals to do legwork. Interdimensionals and extraterrestrials have a incompatibility. It's not completely not completely not doable, but they don't really prefer the density of Earth. So they created this hybrid to do their legwork. And basically, she comes and gets me prepared takes me to wherever I'm needed, wherever they want me, gets me on craft. And when I'm on craft, I am around many different races. I am around the tall, the interdimensionals that are 7 to 8 foot tall, that are human-like, but not human. They have a few features like humans, but they are not human. I am around Nordics, are all these reptilians, tall grays, aquatic beings, all these different beings that are all together on a mothership. This is a mothership of many different races, all aspiring for the same thing, and that is the betterment of humanity. So once I get on craft, I do not see her, the hybrid gray, and the other two until it's time to leave. And then they will be the ones that bring me back, make sure I get securely back to my home, wherever I am. I've lived all over the world in many different places, and it doesn't matter where I am. They know where I am, and they get me back, get me to and from every single time.
People report having different types of experiences. Some are very positive, as you have just recounted. Others claim to have very negative encounters where they're probed, perhaps some sort of painful surgical procedure is performed. What entities are responsible for the negative encounters, do you suppose?
Out of every race, which there are many, many races, and within each race, there are many, many different types of races within the Arturians, within the Nordics, within the reptilian, within the gray, many, many different ones. None of them are demonic. Some of them do not have the empathy for humanity that the positive great in number has. So they are not demonic and they are not warlike, but like I said, they prefer their agenda. They are self-serving to their needs, not necessarily of humanity. But as I get older and the more that I am around abductees, which I am not and have never been, I have a better understanding and perception of what is going on. Everyone on this planet, all of us, regardless of whether we are, whether we remember or whether we are or have made soul contracts to be involved in this endeavor of our evolution, that we're going through an evolutionary phase now of waking up to higher consciousness. We are all here for a purpose. We all chose to be here. We are all part of disclosure. Humanity is, and we are the disclosure. We are the disclosure because we are waking up and realizing our true origins. We are waking up and reaching higher consciousness and understanding our planet Earth and the world around us, our perceptions. We are realizing that there are things going on in our planet, on our planet and around us and throughout the universe that are more than what we can perceive with our five senses. There is life all around us. Things that we never realized are alive and conscious beings, such as our air, our water, our plants, our trees, the universe, the planets. Our planet Earth is a living conscious being. We are just now getting to this evolutionary intellectual level that the world has been waiting for, that the universe has been waiting for, that extraterrestrials and interdimensionals have been waiting for. So our perceptions are going to change about a lot of things. And one of the things that I have realized is that the perception of being abducted is misunderstood. Yes, it's real. Yes, it happened. Our perception of what happened is that our fear took over. Our understanding of what was happening was fear-based, distorted. And it won't be until we reach higher consciousness and understand these things that everyone will wake up and understand they were actually made an agreement to be part of this whole process in our evolution. They actually unknowingly don't remember, but they're playing an important role. And as they wake up, they will realize it wasn't necessarily what they thought it was. There are no probes. There is no ugliness or negativity. They are billions of years ahead of us in evolution. As we progress through our evolution, as they did, we will walk away from negative aspects, programming, manipulations of our lives as they did. They have just seen many races and species go through this same progress. This is not their first rodeo on evolution for beings. So we are just at the little first steps of it, but more of us are waking up. And there's people like Travis Walton, Geraldine Orozco, all these different people that have come to the realization of what they first thought was a negative abduction. They now realize it as being part of our evolution, part of a great plan to help us move forward in our evolutionary process.
Okay, Nancy, we'll take a quick time out. Nancy Thames is with us. Time for Disclosure, the website, timefordisclosure.com, the link in the episode notes. Back with more. Stay with us. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. Welcome back, lifelong contactee. Nancy Thames is with us, timefordisclosure.com. My limited understanding of these things is that these contacts often are generational. Is that true for your family?
It is. Some in my family do not want to admit it or acknowledge it. And I think a lot of us are this way. In the past, our world was not ready for this. It is not easy stepping out and putting yourself out there and telling the world who you are, what you've experienced. It is not easy. There's been many times that I did not understand this. It's a whole process. So yes, the answer to your question is yes, but not just me. The whole world has experienced these things, but the world wasn't ready. But we are ready now. It's a different world. People are more open. People are understanding that there's things, opportunities, doorways opening of our understanding and intellect that has never happened before. So it is the time. It is the perfect time for all this to happen. So yes, people have.
So are you saying that it's happening to all of us, but we may not be aware, we may not be remembering it, or is there a specific reason you were chosen? Members of your family may have been chosen.
I know why I was chosen. When I was in my late early 30s, late 20s, I witnessed my two sons being taken for the first time. And it was very, very upsetting. And everything changed for me. I was angry. I was upset. I was determined to get answers. I wanted to know the purpose. I wanted to know why, all these things. And so after I got home from my trip where this happened, was on a vacation with my children at Key West. So when we got home, I sat down and meditated to them and asked for face-to-face answers. And they didn't come immediately. I'm not one of these people that says I can call them in or anything fanciful like that. That's not what this is all about. They're not here to impress any of us, and I am not either. It is what it is. So when they were ready, they came and they got me and took me before a group of elders. And when I went to the elders, I asked these questions. Why me? Why my children? Why is this happening? What does it mean? What is the purpose? And they explained to me that I had made a choice before coming here to Earth and having my human experience. I made a choice to be here for this time, in this time frame, this pivotal moment of humanity, because this has been a well drawn out plan that has been planned and elevated to this moment in history. So I was part of a planned part of this. I made a choice. I was interdimensional before I came here, and they showed me myself coming into the human experience, and me and my soul essence going into my mother and into the fetus within her, and how it all came about. And they explained to me that when I wake up, that all this memories of my past lives would be forgotten, but they would be visiting me throughout my life, helping me to remember, helping me to understand my purpose and my mission here on earth, and where I'm from and what I'm here to do. And that is what has happened to me. It didn't happen overnight. It was a long, drawn out process. And the final wake up call that really hit the ball through the ballpark was they gave me a Kundalini awakening, because in my 50s, yes, I understood and accepted all this, but my downloads and a lot of the things that I knew, I kept questioning, like, where do I get this information? Who is giving me this information? How do I know this? I was questioning my knowledge on my knowledge. So basically, when I would ask them questions, they would say, you already know. And I kept just was looking at them, and they finally gave me a Kundalini awakening.
Explain what that is.
Okay. So basically what happened to me was I was asleep. They pull me up in the bed. I get a surge of energy rushing through my head all the way down to the lower trunk of my body while sitting up. And my head is like this. And then it comes back up. And then I go back down and come back up. And they do this to me 3 times. And it scared me to death. I had no clue what it was, what it meant, anything. So basically, once I had my next experience with them, they said, what do you think it was? And I said, Kundalini awakening. And they were like, yes. But they explained to me, they were opening my subconscious up into my human consciousness. So not only would I know where all this information is coming from, but to help me understand who I am, and for me to stop questioning who I am, stop questioning where the information is coming from, because it is knowledge they have given me and I have personally experienced. So it was a very strange thing, but I think this awakening is also a part of what humanity will experience in our evolutionary waking up. My son has already had this happen. He's 42. So I think it will be happening, awakenings will be happening among us all. And I hope that people will have a better understanding of these things, because I had no understanding. I lived through it and I finally figured it out, but it was very, very scary at the time.
Take us back to Key West when your sons were taken. What did you see? Them like
Okay.
levitating
So,
off their bed, or what happened?
okay, yes. My ex-husband and I were in one bed. My children were in the bed across from us. We were at the Marriott Hotel, Key West, right on the beach. And I woke up. I could feel their frequency. I felt them coming. So I raised up in the bed, and then before me, 3 short grays appeared, and they were gray, and they were wearing robes, very high collars. These were not the grays that come for me. So one of them saw me sitting up and approached me, took his hand, pressed me down on the left side, and telepathically told me, "This is not about you. Go to lay back down." And so I laid back down, and he put me in a sleep paralysis. I was fully conscious, but I could not speak and I could not move. And then I saw them walk over to my children's bed and take them by the hand and slowly walk off and disappear. And then I fell asleep. And the next morning when I woke up, I looked over and they were safely in their bed. And we all went to breakfast, and I asked them if they had any strange dreams or anything that they wanted to talk about. And they just looked at me and no, so they had no conscious memories of it. And I always wondered, I was upset at the time. I was angry at the time. I thought it was awful at the time. Why couldn't I be a part of it? Why was it happening to them, et cetera, et cetera. But now I understand. They could have easily have done that, and I could have never known. I would have never known. But they wanted me to know. They wanted me to know that this is not just about me. This is about my children. And also now I understand there's many, many more of us in humanity that are a part of this, and we just don't remember it.
So they had no conscious memory at the time. Do they remember?
No.
Do they remember now? And are they?
Yes.
Did one son is having a kind of a Kundalini awakening? What about the other?
He has the full experiences like I do, and the full downloads. The younger son is more caught up in his everyday world. He knows all this, but he's not ready. His children are very young. He's not ready to take that big leap over into it like I have and my oldest son. We're fully aware, fully into all of this. And they instigate us going on trips and send us off to places like Mexico to meet indigenous people and to experience different things. So, and it's so cool because for the first time in my life, my son and I can have these conversations. We can talk about our experiences together. We can explore the different concepts. It is a beautiful thing. And this is our gift from them for being a part in learning and being receptive. I don't know how to explain such a beautiful thing to make sense to people, but it is a beautiful, wonderful thing.
Nancy, we'll take another time out. We'll come back and we'll talk about the downloads. Nancy Thames, timefordisclosure.com. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. on rumble.com. See you over there. Nancy Thames is with us, timeForDisclosure.com. So tell me about these downloads. These are telepathic, and what do you learn from these downloads?
Well, for me, it's more hands-on experience, face to face. I am a hands-on person. My son, he receives tons of downloads, and he has a better way of his perception of that's the way he perceives and understands things. For me, I'm more of a hands-on person. I do get things in dream state, but in my dream state, I am experiencing it. Like sometimes I wonder, was it a dream? Which let's put it this way. Is my human experience the dream, or is my extraterrestrial experience the dream? I know that sounds weird, but it's just as much real and alive, and I can pinch and touch myself. So I'm a real hands-on person. So he gets more downloads than me. But the things that they have taught me that meant the most to me was the fact that everything on our planet is alive and conscious being. Our plants are communicating, our trees communicate. We cannot see these things because we are in a 3D world and we use only our 5 senses. But there are things in life, activity going on all around us. And as we evolve through our evolutionary and reaching higher consciousness and going to a higher dimension, our awareness will open up and we will be more aware of these things. Extraterrestrials and interdimensional craft are not hiding from us. They are all over our skies. They are all over our solar system. They are all over the universe and other universes and other galaxies. We simply cannot see it with our eyes. But these things will change as we progress into a higher dimension. Dimensions are not physical places. Dimensions are higher consciousness. And we are gradually getting up there. And that's why they are so interested and why they are here now, why they are surrounding our planet and putting in frequencies of love, unity, all these things to help inspire and help elevate our own awakening and our own personal raising of our frequencies to help us to become better human beings, more positive human beings, and understand the world around us and understand our old ways of programming and manipulation no longer serve us.
Why all the secrecy? Why are governments trying to, it seems, suppress this information?
I don't think it's so much our governments as it is the elites. The elites, the dark government, the dark side of government, the dark side of humanity, the dark side, the cabal, the black hats. These are the controllers. They manipulate humanity. They manipulate our governments. They manipulate our religions. They manipulate our banking systems. They manipulate the toxins in our water, our air, our food. They manipulate our pharmaceutical companies. They want to be in charge. They've always known that someday these interdimensionals and positive extraterrestrials that I call, meaning the ones that want the betterment of humanity, would come. And they always knew that at some point they would have a hard time controlling and manipulating humanity, because once we reach higher consciousness, we wake up, realize our uniqueness, who we are, what our capabilities are, the fact that there's things in our DNA that they have intentionally kept suppressed from us, our origins suppressed, our history of our planet suppressed. But once we start realizing this and we realize we are all one, humanity is all one, we are all connected. When we realize this unity and we come together, we are unstoppable. They have no more control. They can manipulate us no more. They will not control our world and our universe and us. They will no longer say what we see on our news. They will no longer pollute our world, our planet, our food, our air, our water, we will not be dependent. Our banking systems, our religious systems are all breaking down. We are growing past all these old ways. It no longer serves us because of our higher consciousness, if that makes any sense to you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do the elites have secret agreements with certain alien entities, extraterrestrials, interdimensionals?
What happened is that there were a few rogue groups of different races. The Greys and reptilians get the major blunt of it from humanity, but there were certain fractions of these that necessarily, they made treaties with the government and they traded out technology to these governments, and in return they did genetic research or research for their agenda. Every single race, especially within the Greys, every single race, they have their own function, their own we call it a job, or we call it a skill, we call it a technical attribute. They have their own attribute within their hive mind collective consciousness group of Greys. But when this one group decided to jump out and do their own trade-off with governments, and in return they did their research because they were genetic scientists and they worked on their agenda, their self-serving and what they wanted. That was not a reflection of what the rest of the interdimensionals and other extraterrestrials wanted to do. And when they did that, they were no longer part of the collective consciousness. And this particular groups, they saw that they were doing nothing wrong. And the reason why that they felt they were doing nothing wrong is because when you think about it, it is no different than what our scientists, our biologists, or different people go out within our waters and our forests, our jungles, and we take blood samples and do these things to animals. Okay. So it's really, in their eyes, no different than what we were doing on our own planet. But our perception was, we didn't consider what we were doing to be bad, only what they were doing to us. But the reality is, it is all the same thing, because we are all living conscious beings, even the animals. And they overstepped the boundary of humans being here on free will, and that was frowned upon. But it was not anything to cause a war or anything of that nature. But when the interdimensionals and all of the positive extraterrestrials realize humanity is waking up to higher consciousness, they asked these other races, stop, leave humanity alone. They understand. They are more aware and coming more intellectually ready. They understand. They're understanding all this is coming. Stop. And they did. Some people will argue with me about that, but they did. And they were asked to.
Was there an exchange of technology? Are there elites with UFO propulsion, free energy?
Yes. Yes. And everything that we ever needed when we were created was put here on this planet for us to be connected with. There's a cure for all diseases or was placed here on this planet. We do not need pharmaceutical synthetic drugs. So they've been sitting on this knowledge and technology. This is not a recent occurrence. This has been going on for decades, eons, long, long time. That's why we have racism. That's why we have separation, different religions, different languages, why we always feel separated, not fully together, because the intention was for us to always be together, united. And that separation is what's kept us to keep us lower consciousness, dumbed down, so to speak, and kept us from understanding and realizing that even our pineal gland is crystallized because of the toxins and pollutions around us. And the fact that we were told that higher intelligence, being intuitive, being telepathic at one time was considered demonic. These things are not demonic. These are things that are within our DNA that have been dumbed down and suppressed. But we are coming into a world now where we understand these things, and our world is changing, is going to change dramatically.
Do you have a timeline? When does full disclosure happen, and what does that even mean, full disclosure?
For everybody, it means something differently. For me, full disclosure has already happened because our governments have acknowledged it. And we will realize as we further get into higher consciousness, we do not need the governments to tell us what we already know. We are the disclosure. Our higher intelligence, our reaching higher dimensions of thinking, new ways of living. We are the disclosure. It is not about the government telling us something. It is us waking up and realizing who we are. We are intelligent. We know these things. We do not need all these things that have manipulated and suppressed us to tell us that this is the way that our world is. We will know it. We are the disclosure. And this is what the world has been waiting for. This is what our planet Earth has been waiting for. All of these living conscious beings on our planet have been waiting for human beings to wake up and know our connection with them, our planet, to know that we are connected to it, and we will learn a better appreciation and love for it, for us to realize we are connected to the cosmic realm and the universe, all extraterrestrials and interdimensionals, because they played a part in our creation. Notice I said they played a part. They did not do it all. One race did not do it all. They all believe in a creator source, and they all have souls. They played a part along with creator source, and they are all a part, just like we are. We don't know our past. We are all a part of this. We are all connected.
What is the tipping point? What is going to fully, what is going to cause full disclosure? Is there something that has to get done? And what is that? And how will it happen?
It is happening. It will continue happening, and it is going to continue, and it will be, this mission will be fulfilled. How it all plays out is up to us. People like you, people like me, putting this information out there, people helping others to understand who they are, to look within, find your inner soul self, be the person who you came here to be. I figured out I am not the Nancy Timms that the world around me programmed me to be. I am the Nancy Timms inside, my soul self, the Nancy that came here with a purpose, a mission. I'm here to enjoy my human experience, not to suffer, not to be manipulated and controlled. Once we realize who we are, why we are here, and that we can enjoy our experience here, it does not have to be a hardship. It should not be any poverty, sickness, disease. There should not be any wars. It should be a peaceful, wonderful experience. And we realize that our population is controlled by these manipulations. This will change when we realize that we have the potential to self-heal some of ourselves, and all the things on our planet were put here to help us stay healthy and healed. Negativity has to stop. That is one thing that triggers disease, depression. It's not good. We are going to figure these things out on our own. And when we do, we are going to live longer lives, enjoy the human experience. And we are the stepping stones for the future of humanity to have better human experiences and lives here and longer lives here.
What happens? What happens the day after disclosure? Do we have like mass sightings, landings? Suddenly we have free energy. What happens the day after?
The first beings that will be introduced will be ones that look like us. It will be done in a way that is beautiful, well planned, and in a way that it gives us time to absorb all of this. It will not be like night and day. That's why people under their understandings of things, there's so much misinformation out there, and we have to get through all this misinformation. It is not like night and day, black and white. It is not. It is going to be a slow, gradual, not overnight, but in a way that by the time we're at this other side of disclosure, it will be like it has always been this way. It's just like we will never know we're in the fourth or fifth dimension, because it is a gradual, beautiful process that when we're there, it's like, it's always been like this. These things are done in the most, just like our creation. Everything is done in such a beautiful, pure, intentional way to help us evolve.
Take it to the website, timefordisclosure.com. What'll we find on the website, Nancy?
You find out everything I can think of to help humanity to understand who we are. I will, I'll talk about my experiences. I talk about podcasts or my interactions and through this process of getting information out there. Links to places where people can get the good sources, good links, good ways, meetups, groups that experiencers can go to and interact, forums where you can interact, people, therapists, the whole 9 yards, anything you need access to information and those contacts and resources that we can use to help us all and to help our families and help any friends. And these are not things that we push on people. We learn these things to better ourselves. And when they finally come to us, then we can help them. But we are not going to, we can lead a horse to water, but we can't make it drink it. But we can let them know we're available when you're ready.
Nancy, great to meet you. Thank you so much for spending some time.
Thank you. I hope you'll have me again sometime. I love this. This is what I love.
I'd be delighted to have you again. Bye-bye. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there.